Hello, I'm so excited to introduce today's episode. But before I do, I want to tell you about a new and very exciting opportunity to support Project Stand. If you believe in our mission to empower parents, youth, and communities to use technology in healthy ways, then will you take a stand by joining our Stand community? We invite you to give as little as $3 a month to help support our efforts to support you. You can sign up at projectstand.org/stand. Thank you so much for your support. Hello and welcome to Raising Today's Kids, a Project Stand podcast. I am so excited to introduce to you today my friend Lisa Frost from Wired Human. She and I met several years ago and we collaborated on a podcast. We were trying to remember, I think it was about 2.5 years ago. And I've just always been so impressed with her and her husband Jason and the things that they're accomplishing. And so I was so grateful when she agreed to come and join me today. So, Lisa, will you just tell us a little bit about you, your background, who you are, and how you got into this field?
Yes, I'm so happy to be here, Brittany. It's a joy to meet you again. I'm actually from Germany, and this is where this whole journey started. I'm a teacher by profession, and it was about 10 years ago that I was working at that time in the German school system and ran into some students that were massively impacted by technology. Now, times have massively changed since then, but there were so many moments as a young teacher that I was looking around and I was like, man, this phone is affecting them. Social media is affecting them. The way they engage, it's affecting their entire world, and I have no idea what to do. I felt completely ill-equipped. And I also saw a lot of things that weren't pretty. Like, just to give you an example, there was a nude going around my school. There were fifth graders acting out a porn scene, fully
Oh,
dressed. And I felt so lost. I was like, this feels wrong, but I was completely overwhelmed at that time.
wow.
And what happened then was that I went home and talked to my husband about it, who was also working in the school system at that time. And he had made similar experiences, equally feeling lost. And out of that feeling of feeling lost, this desire started arising that we feel like we cannot just process the problem. We want to be a part of the solution and we want to be able to address this the right way. Otherwise, we are failing a whole generation. And
Mhm.
so this passion just was born of like, how do we do this? What can we do about this? We actually started out by writing a book. It's called The Glass Between Us, talking to as many experts as we could and as many youth as we could about this theme, because we said, how can we speak into these issues if we don't become experts first? Um,
Yeah.
and then we weren't done. We started an organization called Wired Human that's all about equipping young people to become a part of the solution.
Mhm. And I love it. I love what you're doing. I love your book. It was so inspiring when I read it. I love, I'm a big fan of questions and asking really good questions. And I have referred to your book many times to look for good questions because isn't it like at the end of every chapter, there's really good questions that
Mm-hmm.
parents
Mm-hmm.
or teachers or whoever can engage
Mm-hmm.
their youth with. And they're questions that they get to the root of the issues, but without any kind of shaming or making them feel like there's anything wrong with them or their generation. So, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that is actually something that's hugely important to us. What we realized early on is that we cannot protect or shield this generation entirely because tech is so omnipresent, right? So much more now than it even was 10 years ago, but it's everywhere. Even if we take phones away, their friend is going to have a smartphone, their friend is going to have social media. And whenever you access the smartphone, the internet, open the laptop, you are exposed to the entire world, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Mhm.
And most kids aren't ready when
Yeah.
they receive those devices. And that's where we think that questions, engaging in conversations, all that is absolutely key. And one thing that we have found early on is that We want to approach it in a values-driven way. We believe that this generation can be a great generation of character, and there is a lot of character underneath the hood of a whole lot of tech addiction, tech distractions. We see and are meeting a generation, engaging in a generation that runs really deep. There are so many questions underneath the surface. And what we have found is that if we start uncovering what's really underneath the surface, there's so much revelation revealed in that, and even transformation and change for the in the best way in individual lives, and even we have found that as an organization. So my favorite thing is to take these young people on a journey of discovery of they often know my relationship with tech is not always good. And then they are exposed to things where something doesn't feel right. Like they have this feeling inside of them and say, I love it, but I also hate it. And I feel
Yeah.
drawn to it, but I also feel exploited. And they feel those tensions. And so often there's a vacuum where nobody talks to them about it. It's just like, well, this is the world we live in, it's all there. But then you start unveiling the covers and get into deep queer conversations, and there's an awakening happening that can lead to so much good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so how do you do that? How do you where are you having these conversations and how
Mhm,
are you doing that, helping them
mhm.
get to that awakening?
Yeah, we call it the downstream and the upstream approach.
Okay.
So we do think that something needs to change at a systematic level. We do not have laws that are sufficiently protecting kids.
Right.
And that's, by the way, a universal issue. There's no country on this planet that's protecting kids in a way that they are consistently safe, do not encounter predators, do not encounter harmful images when they are online. It's bound to happen. So that's the reality we live in.
Yeah.
And we feel that countries and the states, they are not caring enough. So we
Mm.
want to see change in that area of laws that are actually protecting this generation and also empowering them while not just limiting everything, because we can't, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then we also have the upstream approach where we say we need to equip with education, and we need to equip with knowledge and with understanding. And that's where we work in schools a lot, and we call it again the values driven approach, where we do talk to parents, we do talk to students, but then we also always want an empowering element where we say to any young person, you are part of the solution.
Mm.
And our curriculum that we have developed does that of we are going to take you on a journey, and we don't just want to protect you, but we want to empower you. We want to take you by the hand, that by the end of this you actually feel like you can be a part of the change. And then we have a national youth coalition that ties into the advocacy aspect. We have these powerful young people starting at 13 years old, and we take them on the journey of really understanding. And then we say, we want to connect you to leaders
Mm.
because we think there's so much power when young people have a seat at the table. So, one thing we do annually is we have a round table. The last two times we met in the capital of the United States. And then we gather senators, congressmen. We had a first lady from Virginia share the last time, and even people from tech. And then we invite young people to the table and say, share your stories, share your thoughts, share your hearts. And what we are finding is that people that are so opposed even on the political spectrum, or some coming from big tech, from TikTok, from Apple, some being influencers that want to talk about the exploitation of big tech, and then political leaders that sometimes feel overwhelmed, they meet in this one room around a table, and then they hear from young people. And we have added through storytelling, through art, through videos, through their personal testimonies, through surveys where they've collected answers from their peers. They tell us what's going on in your life online. These leaders need to hear. And what
Yeah.
we are seeing is there is so much breakthrough happening in the room through that approach. And all of a sudden, all the division disappears because we are meeting, as parents, as aunts and uncles, as friends, as mentors, and we can see what's going on firsthand. It's immensely powerful. So we think that young people, kids and teens, youth alike, college students alike, they are a part of the change, and we are watching it over and over again. And it's such a privilege to see that within our organization and beyond.
Oh, I love it. It's a privilege for me to witness it from a distance. I get your letters and updates about, I mean, I've read some of the quotes that some of the youth have shared at these roundtables, and they are so powerful. I have so many questions about how did you get a place in the capital of the United States to even make that
That's a,
happen?
that is a fair question. I sometimes wonder that too. It wasn't my works. But what I would say is, there was a vision birthed in our hearts. And actually, this story, I don't think we've ever shared it on any podcast, but there was someone who was doing roundtables for religious freedom and worked in DC. And he had a conversation with my husband, which now we lead Wired Human together. If you ever want to do a round table for online safety, I want to help you and even open up a space. And that wasn't the first one, wasn't in the capital. It was close to the capital, but that's how it was born. Um, Through that inspiration, a moment of this one leader who had seen the power of people gathering around a table and us feeling like this would be a really good model. And to be honest, we were so surprised that we had then people coming in, flying in from Canada, from the West Coast, like people that we are like, we're just this little organization, we just started. How in
Yeah.
the world did these people say yes? Because we didn't have a whole lot of credibility at that time. That was about 3 years ago. And by now we have had 4 roundtables. At the
Yeah.
first one, we were too scared to even have any youth in the room because we're like, what about the safety theme? Do we have really child safety policies in place? We didn't have everything in place then, but we saw the power. And then with each round table, we're like, okay, what's the angle? What's the theme? There was one round table where we felt very strongly that we needed underrepresented youth, because they experience the greatest harm.
Mm.
And the reason is that, if you do not have strong connections in real life and you feel lost and you feel lonely and you feel maybe a little bored and feel like there's no one you can trust, you're gonna turn to the internet to find these connections and the self-validation. And sadly, there's a lot of exploitation happening on the other end because people can sniff that out.
Mhm.
And so many times people are not who they say they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had young people that got trafficked on TikTok, and then they would share their stories and they would share how the algorithm would connect them to the right predators depending on where they stayed. Heartbreaking stories, but also stories that I believe need to be told.
Yeah.
And those young people were brave enough to share about their online experiences that are absolutely devastating. We
Yeah.
had one young guy whose brother committed suicide, and he only realized through engaging with us that he was like, wow, big tech might have been the main reason, not just like some footnote. And that's where we feel like if we can transport these stories into society, we think there are going to be ripple effects.
Yeah.
We had one young guy, he actually now started his own organization. His name is Harrison. Huge fan. You should have him on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Harrison, he got groomed on a gaming platform at 12 years old, and he was just looking for a friend. And then, he was like, felt like the person on the other side was his only friend. And then it turned into a situation where he got asked to send nude pictures, where he got asked to do certain things for him, where he got encouraged to do self-harm. And one day his parents found out and shut everything down. But obviously, that brought a lot of turmoil into this young man's life, a lot of brokenness. And he is one of those ones that I look up to because he came from that place of brokenness, that place of deep trauma, that place of just betrayal and trust that had been broken. And then he went on a journey of healing and of seeking counseling and of talking to the right people. And then he got to a place where he said, I want to share my story so
Mm.
others won't experience this again.
Wow.
And then he actually was on Good Morning America. It completely blew up. He's
Wow.
been invited all over the country. He has, shared with Governor Youngkin with certain things they are doing in the state of Virginia, and now he actually has his own organization um, because he just wants to equip a generation.
That's
And it's just these stories that give me so much hope.
mhm.
And when I see that tragedy doesn't stay a tragedy, but really becomes a story of hope, a story of change, a story of new, it just moves my heart like hardly anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow, what amazing experiences you've had. So, where are you finding these youth who are willing to come and be part of these
Mhm.
conversations and share their
Mhm.
stories?
Originally, it started really organic. We would speak in schools, we would engage with parents, we would engage with students, and we had this vision in our heart. And then we found partner organizations that were already working with youth and said, I'm willing to come with my young people to the States. I wanna invite them in a room, but I'm also gonna take on somewhat of a mentoring role. That's how it started.
Mhm.
And at this point, we actually have a really solid youth coalition, the Wired Human Youth Coalition, with a chair and a co-chair. They have only been working with us at a real working capacity for a couple months now. And now they're at a place where they're like thinking up their own projects. So right now they're actually working on an art project where they're inviting students across the country to paint what they're experiencing online.
Wow.
And then we are going to display it in different parts of the country. And our role is, as the leaders of the organization, is we always want to connect those voices to leaders, and
Yeah.
we want to give them these platforms where there's actually going to be influence, where we can echo their words into the world so loud that the ends of the earth can hear it. That's the vision.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we are also our next step, and that's a big transition right now, is we have seen the power of this youth coalition. We have seen the power of the transformational change of them learning, getting equipped, engaging, recognizing for the first time how powerful their voice actually is, and then finding the courage to speak up and realizing, wow, it has impact, it has influence. And now we want to see this multiplied across the nation. So our dream really is to have these youth coalitions pop up all over the country, and that even schools that participate in some online safety curriculum, it doesn't have to be ours, but that there are these youth that feel like, I feel this pain, but I want to channel my pain into something good,
Mhm.
right? I want to be part of the solution, because one thing that we wrote in our book, and I'm still such a strong believer, is that purposelessness kills, and I
Mm.
think it really does.
Yeah.
I think what we experience online, oftentimes, I'm not saying always, but sadly, because of the algorithms, the setup, the big money making machine, and the way it's keeping us hooked, it often leads to so much purposelessness in the ways we spend our time, our attention, our relationships. And slowly there's something dying inside of us. We're like, oh, I don't feel very good. And I don't know why.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying it's all tech, but I think it's a huge piece at times, especially for young people whose brains are still maturing. You know, the brain is maturing till 25. So I know the pull of technology. I know how easy it is to stay on my phone, especially when I'm tired or angry.
Yeah.
Or just a little bored at night, but don't have the energy to do anything else. But it doesn't lead to fruit, right? There's nothing flourishing inside of me.
Hmm.
But I also think that young people, especially that find their purpose, maybe through being an agent of change in this tech theme. It doesn't have to be, but becoming that person that's like, I can do things with my life. I can change things in this world. I actually have a place in this world where my life and my voice is significant, even though I might be exposed to, 8 million other voices online all the time that
Yeah.
seem to be doing great things. I think it's so much more important than ever that we engage a generation to discover their values, to discover their purpose, to not just be a victim, but be somebody that's like, I can do things, not
Mhm.
just in my personal life, but I can change things in my home. I can change things in the classroom. I can change things in my school. I can change things in the country. Because if we don't win this generation, we're going to be pretty doomed.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, you are speaking my language. I love it. We talk a lot at Project Stand about goals and values, and I think goals and goes right in line with what you're saying about
Hmm.
finding your purpose. Like, what is
Hmm.
going to drive you? Because if you don't have something driving you to become something, you're right.
Hmm.
There's this purposelessness, and it leads to just nothingness.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
and when you were talking about that, I was thinking about, well, I think having a purpose and having values that drive your decisions online, it seems like that's like you're putting up a shield every time you go
Hmm.
online. It's like there's this
Hmm.
shield that's protecting you from those
Hmm.
harms, from those millions of other voices and
Hmm.
those pressures and those other ideas that
Hmm.
maybe not don't match your values and things. So,
I love that image. Yes, I agree. It's like a shield. And I think what we have to realize and come to terms with is the internet is not neutral, right? And especially the internet, the younger people are experiencing is not a neutral place.
no.
It's full of values, but what values are we seeing online? And I'm not now talking about, no, I'm also a mom of three. Like, I recognize there are things I see that bring up my own insecurities, like when I go online, it's funny, but it always shows me that like my kids have some kind of issues. And I'm just logging into our Wired Human Instagram account and it's like, oh, your child might have this and this and this. And I start thinking about this. It's like the algorithm picked up on my insecurities as a mom, even though that's not even my personal account. It's crazy to me.
Wow.
Um, and it's feeding me things and it's messing with my mind. And then if we think of anybody younger, what is it? It's wealth, it's beauty, it's skin, it's exposure, and it's the most extreme. Like we know that that's how the algorithm works. That's not a secret anymore. But when I see like, oh, I should have all this money, I should drive all these cars, or I should look this way, and I should do beauty surgery, and I should get this skin toner, and I should buy that cream, like all that stuff is actually works. It's not just the algorithm, but then it's also the influencers that get first place, right? We had somebody at our roundtable, our first roundtable, and she said, if I post off my great work with my organization, she was with a partner organization, um, and they do great things about exploitation. It's called World Without Exploitation. And she said, if I post something about my work with World Without Exploitation, it's going to reach a few people that have an interest in my work. But if I were going to post a picture in a bikini, it would go viral everywhere. And I
Yeah.
think she is so right. And it's not okay and it's not fair. And I think it's something we need to change at a structural level.
Yeah.
But I also think I want to use your imagery of the shield. That's why it's so much more important that alongside of technology and also outside of technology. If that's where I spend all of my time and that's all I'm exposed to all day long, it can mess me up pretty good and pretty early on. That's why we also promote less later limits. We see the beauty of technology, we see the beauty of connection, but we think that an 8-year-old shouldn't be on social media and they shouldn't be on most gaming platforms that have the same design of, you know, algorithmic addiction cycles to keep us hooked.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so I've been wondering about your perspective on AI specifically and
Hmm.
what's happening there. And you when you were talking about purposelessness, again, I was thinking about when, for example, when I go on Chat GPT or something and I'm looking for like help with brainstorming something,
Hmm.
and it comes up with all these great ideas and great answers.
Hmm.
There's something very different for me about the satisfaction I get when I come up with it by myself versus
Hmm.
when I'm using AI to help generate
Hmm.
things. And
Hmm.
I think there's a big risk there. I mean, there's lots of ways that AI is
Yeah.
risky, but I
Yeah.
think when we are using AI to help us with our purpose, there's a lack of satisfaction that comes there.
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
it is something that it's kind of numbing almost. I don't
Hmm.
know. What are your
Hmm.
thoughts on
Hmm.
AI?
Hmm. Yeah, and there's even studies that it does lower our brain capacities, right? Because it's doing the thinking for us.
Yeah.
I will say I have definitely seen the benefits. We use it in the context of our organization, and it does make a lot of things easier, or certain tasks can be accomplished faster. And it's a blessing in that sense that I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, we are absolutely using it for good. And I have also had these moments myself where I'm like, "Ah," like now I have, this letter for whatever already drafted, but I didn't have the wrestling. And Jason and I, we actually always look at each other and say, we are so glad that we wrote this book before AI came out because there was so much wrestling, especially as a husband and a wife. It's
Yeah.
like somebody has a thought and the other person has a thought. And then it's like, yeah, but should we write it like this or like that?
Yeah.
And man, blood, sweat, and tears for sure. But there was also so much wrestling in that process that really helped us see, really helped us understand. We're like, okay, what's the issue here? What are we looking at? What are the solutions? What's the path? And it was years of, even sacrificing vacation, sacrificing free time, finishing it while our oldest was taking a nap, and just, it was painful, but it was also painful with a lot of fruit because what was birthed inside of us just went really deep.
Yeah.
And I think the danger that we have these days is that we can become really shallow. We
Yeah.
can lose the capacity to think. And then there's even something more dangerous happening. I was actually, right before coming on to this podcast, I was reading a newsletter from Center of Humane Technology that Tristan Harris started, who's a design ethicist and used to work for Google.
Mm.
And the newsletter was just talking about the first lawsuit that they were aware of, where parents of a child that had committed suicide um, were suing Altman and ChatGPT, essentially, or OpenAI, because they could see in the search history of the laptop and ChatGPT that the son had, struggled with suicidal ideation and mental health and all that. But ChatGPT had actually suggested the term suicide 5 more times. So it was in the thousands. And they obviously ChatGPT wasn't blatantly saying like you should commit suicide. I wouldn't go as far to say that, but what we have found is that it's not safe. You know, we have now chatbots that are completely sexualized at times, chatbots that are suggesting to engage with adults, even in a sexual capacity, and things that are just absolutely immoral, not okay. And what we've seen with social media, where things are not okay in the, let's call it real world, right, in the analog world, and then we see them on social media and somehow it's okay, and it's like, oh, this is all free speech and it's all protected. It's like, no, we actually have laws about this. It's not okay. It's
Yeah.
illegal. We are talking about children, right? And now we have what we have seen with social media on steroids, of who was responsible. You know, was it a computer that generated that? Oh, you know, Altman, he didn't know about this. And that's where uh, I'm I'm a bit overwhelmed with the speed. I'm not gonna lie, but I
Yeah.
also feel the urgency of equipping early and more, as much as we can. And
Yeah.
I would say that I've also talked to young people who are already tired of always, you know, using the chat function or just having all the answers delivered. I have heard from so many teachers that say it's so hard, like, because, you know, there's no deep critical thinking, there's no writing skills that's really being developed. And I don't know how to teach that with students where it's all done for them. Now, I also have hope because I know a lot of amazing young people who have figured out, you know, how to live great, beautiful, successful lives in
Yeah.
this day and age. But it didn't come by itself. I'm sure it came from parents, teachers, maybe youth leaders, maybe pastors, maybe a church, maybe a sport or a coach, or I think it came from people who gave these kids when they were younger the opportunity to go on a journey, to learn values, to learn reflection, to learn how to engage, and then also to learn where to stop technology,
Yeah.
where it starts and where it stops. I think unlimited technology at a very early age is not a good idea.
No, absolutely not. Okay, so you have done some incredible things. These issues have settled so deep in your heart, like you said. I wonder about, when I first started, and even still, I have moments where I kind of feel like a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like, who do I think I am taking on
Mhm,
such a big problem in this
mhm,
world?
mhm,
And I am totally not qualified for this.
mhm.
So
Yep.
I should just back off. But I have the feeling that there are going to be parents listening to this
Mhm,
who are so inspired by you and what you've shared and how you just started from a concern about the students in your classroom. That's where
mhm,
you started from. And that has led to making some big changes and impacting youth all over the country and impacting legislation as well and getting your the message to the hearts of legislators and other leaders around the country. So,
mhm,
what would be your message to parents out there who might have an idea or might have a concern, but don't feel like they're the person or that they have the qualifications to do anything with that idea?
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I would just say one step at a time. You know, now I have three kids, and I will tell you I don't have it all figured out.
Mhm.
And I think it's a constant weighing of, you know, where can my son, my daughter play this little game? Where can they watch a show? Where do I let them experience what everyone else is experiencing, and how young and where can I engage in conversations? And I I know it's a struggle. I know there's no formula, and I know it doesn't come easy. So the one thing I want to say to you is do not become guilty. You
Mm.
didn't choose this world. You didn't want your children to grow up in this world. At least I don't think, not with this kind of internet.
Yeah.
Um, And parenting is a million times harder than it's always been. That's just a reality. And that's where I think it's so important that we talk to each other, we encourage each other, and we do not define ourselves by the missteps, just how we don't want that for our kids, right? We want them to grow strong in this. And we want them to have a place to land when they mess up, which they will at some point, to say, I'm a safe place to land. You can come to me. I'm here for you. I think that's extremely important. So I just urge you to tell yourself, I can do this.
Mm.
We can do things differently. We have actually started to do something inside of our family now. We talked about values earlier, and now we've defined our family values, where we say, what do we stand for as a family? Like one of our values is adventure,
Mm.
because we want our kids to experience real life, like, you know, be outside, experience nature. Um, and this summer, for example, we actually had the privilege to go to Italy. But the first place we stayed at was this little cabin on an Alp. Like you had to park your car and then walk an hour up the mountain to get to the
Wow.
place. No Wi-Fi. It was beautiful. It was stunning, but it
Mm.
was adventure. It
Yeah.
wasn't the comfy, the comfy hotel. And it
Right.
was such a beautiful experience as a family. Like, let me tell you, the way we bonded, the way we engaged, there was such a fresh expression of experiencing something, that nobody else did with just us. It was precious. And I'm not saying that has to be your value, but I would say start with your family. What's defining you?
Yeah.
How do you want to live? Like how do you want to spend the Friday night or the Sunday morning? And of course, there are things that are out of our control and there are situations that are incredibly hard. And I've had moments, even for Wired Human, where my kids have watched a show because I needed to do something. It happens. This is the life we live in. And at the same time, I also think life is a beautiful struggle.
Mm.
It's hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard to find the balance. But that struggling and that wrestling, I think, is absolutely worth it. And then I want to encourage you to look around and see, who is it that's in my sphere of influence?
Mm.
It might be your own kids, it might be your workspace, it might be, your kids and your neighbors' kids, or your kids and the friends of your kids. And then say, how do we want to live things differently? Like maybe it's when friends come over, smartphones go in a box. Maybe it's um, Adventure Friday. Typically I try to do something somewhat, let's call it exploratory with my kids on Friday afternoons after they get home from school. Now it's not every week, but
Mm.
it's a goal. I'm like, I want to, what can we be doing?
Mm.
And so we can't save the world. I realized that early on, and having Wired Human now for a couple of years, there have also been moments of deep discouragement and moments of really feeling the price of like, whew, so much uncertainty when you run an organization. I'm sure, Brittany, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So moments of like, oh, can we just do, the 9 to 5 and have a little bit more safety and be able to look, around the corner just a little bit more. Um, but I also come back to that place of like, okay, there's stuff I can do. There's stuff I can change. Who are my people? And last year we were really discouraged with the Kids Online Safety Act. Some of you might have heard about it, but that was one of the bills we were supporting because it was a really good, robust online safety
Yeah.
bill that was
And it came so
bipartisan.
close. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were so close. We were so close. And then I would say, because of Mike Johnson and AI building a big facility in Louisiana, it just didn't come to a floor vote.
Mm.
It went through the Senate with flying colors. I think it was like 92 to 2 or something
Wow.
crazy. And then It just didn't get the vote in the House. And even though there was really not a good reason why that wouldn't happen. And oh, that was hard because it was something that we were actively engaged in. And yeah, that might be like something more abstract for you, but there are these moments where we're just like, oh, man, was this even worth it? Like, why are we even here?
Yeah.
And I think we have to, we have to look ourselves in the face, have to look in the mirror and say, I've got this. I'm gonna get this. I can't control everything. I can't control all the outcomes, but beating myself up is never gonna help.
Yeah.
And sometimes it also might mean that I am taking care of my own mental health.
Mhm.
This is a lot of tough ground
Mhm.
and a lot of challenges that we are facing. And for me, just as a mom and an organization leader alongside of my husband, I just felt like, oh, I need to do fitness. I need to find an outlet to just fill my soul again, fill my body. So I also want to encourage you, don't neglect yourself. Don't
Yeah.
neglect your values and your heart, because if your heart and your soul and your mind and your body is alive, that in itself has a huge impact on anybody around you.
I love that. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. We can't give from or draw water from an empty bucket. Is that
Mhm.
what they say? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, this has been so inspiring. I've loved visiting with you, Lisa. Thank you for everything that you've shared. Is there any last message or anything that you would want to say that before we close?
I want to see a generation of hope, and I want us to have hope. So if I can speak anything into you from mom to mom, from somebody who has started this journey, let us not lose hope. I think this world needs us, and there's so much potential, there's so much beauty waiting out there. And I just don't want us to get stuck in that place of this is all too much and too overwhelming. There is hope,
Yeah.
and radical change is possible. I never want to stop believing that. And I've seen it over and over again. So I want to speak that into you, even if your situation at home with your child feels rather hopeless. There's so much hope. And oftentimes lives change in the most unexpected moments.
That is so beautiful. Perfect. That's a perfect way to end. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to be with you again.
If you felt inspired by today's episode, I hope you will go to projectstand.org/stand to support our efforts to continue providing episodes like this. Thank you for listening and have an awesome day.